The world ended, and Shallan was to blame. That's the opening line of Words of Radiance, Chapter 10, a flashback chapter where we see the aftermath of Shallan killing her mother. At first, this line seems to simply explain the feelings of a young girl who just went through a very traumatic event and feels that the world as she knows it is crashing around her. But what if that line is more literal than it first appears? What if Shallan killing her mother kicked off a chain of events that truly will lead to the world ending? What if Shallan caused the true desolation? That's what we'll be exploring in this video. To start off with, we need to determine just who Shallan's mother was so we can understand how her death may have caused the true desolation. Most of the information we have about her mother comes from Shallan flashback chapters. She had stark red hair, green eyes, and she was wearing a blue and gold dress at the time of her death. Her name has never been revealed in the books. Shallan simply refers to her as Mother. She was married to Lyn Devar, Shallan's father, and together they had 5 children: Helleran, Balat, Wakim, Jushu, and Shallan. In Oathbringer, Shallan receives a letter from Mraize that reveals that her mother was in contact with the Skybreakers and was having an affair with one of their acolytes. This letter also implies that the Herald Nail was keeping tabs on the Devar family. I find it rather odd that a simple light-eyed Vaden woman would have contact with the likes of the Skybreakers and the Herald Nail, but we'll touch on that more in a bit. Shallan's mother eventually found out that Shallan had bonded a Spren and was a budding Knights Radiant. Because of this, she brought a Skybreaker friend with her to the Devar household and she attempted to kill Shallan with a knife. Shallan managed to summon her Shardblade in time, killing both her mother and the Skybreaker friend. That's basically all we've found out so far about Shallan's mother. So what can we deduce from the little information we have? Well, it's safe to assume that her mother wasn't completely sane, considering she tried to kill her own daughter. Plus, her reasoning for trying to kill Shallan seems odd too, calling her one of them before going in for the kill. How did she even know that Shallan had bonded a Spren in the first place? And why would she care? Killing budding Knights Radiance is something that the Herald Nail is known for, and he got that idea from the Herald Ashar. Maybe Shallan's mother was ordered by Nail to do the same. But that still doesn't answer the question of why a simple light-eyed Vaden woman had contact with Nail and the Skybreakers in the first place. Unless, maybe she wasn't just some simple light-eyed Vaden woman. Maybe Shallan's mother is a herald. Now, I know this might sound like a wild claim at first, but there's actually a lot of clues throughout the books that point toward this being the case. We'll go through these clues one by one. The last one is the one that convinced me this theory is true. I want to warn you that I'll be talking about things from the Wind and Truth prologue that Brandon released, so if you want to avoid any spoilers for that, you'll want to stop watching now. The first clue is that Shallan's mother happens to match the physical description of one of the heralds. That herald is Chanarach. In the Wind and Truth prologue, we find out that Chanarach has flaming red hair, just like Shallan's mother. We also got an official rendition of Chanarach in the Rhythm of War end papers. It's a bit hard to tell what the eye color is in this rendition. To me, it looks like one eye is green, which matches Shallan's mother's eye color, and the other one looks blue. Let me know in the comments what colors you see. Another clue is Hoid's reaction when he sees Shallan for the first time in one of her flashbacks from Words of Radiance chapter 45. A man she did not know sat next to Father with a cup of chilled water in one hand. Tall, slender, and blue-eyed, he had deep black hair without a hint of impurity and wore clothing the same shade. He glanced at Shallan as she stepped up into the box. The man started, dropping his cup to the table. He caught it with a swift lunge, keeping it from tipping over, then turned to stare at her with a slack jaw. It was gone in a second, replaced with an expression of practiced indifference. It's quite unusual for Hoid to be dumbfounded, but I don't see how else to describe his reaction to seeing her. We know from this word of Brandon that Hoid visited Roshar thousands of years ago during at least one of the previous desolations, so there's a good chance that he knows Chanarach. I think his reaction here is due to Shallan having such a striking resemblance to her mother, whose true identity is Chanarach. The third clue is all the little coincidences involving Shallan and Chanarach throughout the books. For instance, Chanarach is almost never mentioned in the books, but when she is, it almost exclusively happens in Shallan chapters or in conversations about Shallan. The only two exceptions to this are in Words of Radiance chapter 59 when Hoid tells Kaladin the story of Fleet beating Chanarach in a race, and in the Wind and Truth prologue when Gavilar asks the Stormfather if the lore of Chanarach's red hair was true. So 4 out of the 6 times Chanarach is brought up, Shallan is involved in some way. In Rhythm of War chapter 4, Shallan, or Vale rather, uses the name Chanasa Hasare when she's infiltrating the Sons of Honor. This name is pointed out to be after the legacy of Chanaranach Alin, Herald of the Common Man. This is another name and title for Chanarach. In Oathbringer chapter 27, Malada, a Dustbringer, calls Shallan sister. This is interesting because Chanarach happens to be the patron of the Dustbringers. It's almost like Brandon is throwing a subtle hint at Shallan being associated with Chanarach in some way. In Words of Radiance chapter 45, Shallan wonders what it would be like to be brave like her mother had been. It just so happens that in Vorinism, each of the 10 essences are connected with a herald and that herald's divine attributes. Chanarach's primary divine attribute is bravery. Any of these coincidences alone wouldn't mean much, but they add up to be a pretty intriguing clue. The fourth and final clue is the one that really sold me on this theory. It comes from the Wind and Truth prologue shortly before Gavilar is assassinated. Suddenly, the Stormfather wavered. Lightning pulsed through his shimmering form, lighting Gavilar's room with an electric glow. Blue frost on the rugs, pure light reflecting in the glass of the balcony doors. Then, the Stormfather cried out, a sound like a peal of thunder, agonized. "What?" Gavilar said, backing up. "What happened?" "A herald. A herald has died. No, I am not ready. The Oath Pact. No, they mustn't see. They mustn't know." We see in that passage that a herald was killed the same night of Gavilar's assassination. The assassination happened 6 years before the main story of Words of Radiance takes place. Coincidentally, Shallan killed her mother 6 years before the main story of Words of Radiance takes place as well. I, along with a lot of people in the fandom, think the herald that the Stormfather says died was Chanarach, Shallan's mother, and Shallan was the one who killed her. I think it just fits too well to truly be a coincidence. We also have confirmation that Chanarach has been seen on screen by at least one character at least one time in the first 2 Stormlight books. Shallan seeing her mother in Words of Radiance flashback chapters aligns with that. Brandon was actually asked if Shallan's mother was a herald during a live stream, and this is how he responded.
Avichai Gobrin, was Shallan's mom a herald? From the chat.
What would make you ask that?
The chat did. That's
The
why
chat. Why would they ask that?
I don't know.
The Stormfather said that the heralds that's impossible.
MS07B-3 says, given Demo's religious fervor.
As you just saw, instead of responding with the usual raffo that you would expect for this type of question, he gives a vague answer and then grins mischievously. Maybe he's just messing with us, but it seems rather suspicious. What do you think? Okay, so now we've established that Shallan's mother is the Herald Chanarach, but what does that have to do with starting the True Desolation? Well, we know that the Heralds are bound to the Oath Pact, so when they die, they are sent to Braze to withstand being tortured by the fused who are trapped there. When one of the Heralds on Braze gives in to the torture and bends their oath, a new desolation starts, freeing the fused and returning the Heralds to Roshar. Thousands of years before the start of the main story of the Stormlight Archive, an event known as a Heretium took place. During this event, 9 of the 10 heralds survived a desolation and decided to abandon their honor blades and their oaths, leaving only 1 herald on Braze to withstand the torture and hold back the fused, preventing further desolations. The herald that was left on Braze is Talanel, or Taln for short. He might be the toughest man to have ever existed in the entire Cosmere because he lasted for 4,500 years on Braze, undergoing constant torture until the True Desolation started. That's quite impressive to last thousands of years before breaking. But here's the thing, Brandon has told us that Taln never broke. So how did the True Desolation start? Well, since Shallan's mother is a herald, when Shallan killed her, she was sent back to Braze. She lasted for 6 years, but eventually gave in to the torture. Thus, the True Desolation began. That raises the following questions. Does that mean that it's Shallan's fault? Is she responsible for starting the True Desolation? My answer to both of those is no, of course not. Sure, her killing her mother did lead to the True Desolation, but she was a child at the time, only 11 years old, and her mother put her in a life or death situation. Shallan simply defended herself. If anyone's at fault, it's her mother, Chanarach, for trying to kill Shallan in the first place. I find it a bit ironic that Chanarach was attempting to prevent a desolation by killing Shallan, but she inadvertently caused one instead. Let me know in the comments what you think of this theory. Also, I launched a Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll support the channel and get perks such as early access to videos, patron-only updates, access to the patron-only Discord server, and more. I'll link it in the description, so be sure to check it out. That concludes this video, but there's plenty more Cosmere content on the way, so be sure to give the video a like, hit the subscribe button, and join me on this journey of exploring the Cosmere.